here it is thus far. And there's other little things I got to do with it. And we're going to start putting those things together. The tails are together pretty well. The stabilizer went on nice. Those side pieces went on nice. But I had a little problem back there because, well, I'll tell you later. Those light greenish blue interiors look beautiful. They look really nice. But I have a feeling they're supposed to be concave in on those and also on the fin. But we'll get to that a little bit later. These back here, I don't remember if I told you, but see there's gaps there on either side. And that's not the kit's fault. That's because I remember when I was squeezing that tail piece nicely. It's supposed to be straight back there, not squished. So that's my own fault. I can fix that with a little touch-up paper. Not a big deal. This is a piece like a turtle deck almost that goes right there, and it fits pretty nicely. And it's going to hide some detail back there, but it's supposed to be there. So I test fitted it. I cut it out, trimmed all the way around, etc., etc., and just put a little glue around there, and then very carefully set it on that opening, and then just sort of tap it closed. It's supposed to be flat as far as I can tell. And it drops and glues to the fuselage side very easily. But it's supposed to be flat. I thought maybe it had a curve in it, or had something that was sort of like almost like a Douglas Dauntless that would almost have an opening in it or something, but it doesn't. In fact, the machine gun for the rear gunner is going to fit on that cutout area. We just haven't built that part yet, but a little bit of glue, and then you just very carefully set this down on top and just put it down so you don't put glue everywhere, and you should be okay. And all I do is make sure it is again even, and make sure the lines kind of match up as best as possible. And then sort of tap it down, make sure it's all where it's supposed to be, and everything else. So it looks okay. I'm just making sure what you can't see is I'm trying to sort of make sure that it's in the right location. But there it is, kind of done. Looks nice. I like it. Looks pretty good. Now, as promised, we'll change our tune and go look at that fairing for the fin. So that's the fairing cut out, and it goes right around there. So the first thing you got to do, which you can't see me doing off screen, is I just rolled that to give it a curve, and I'm just test fitting it. Now I made it, and it fits nicely. It fits right up to where those light green parts kind of sit. And if there's any little bits, which I think there are at the end, I need to sort of, I might need to touch up with some paint. It's not the end of the world. It'll be really nice. But as I was test fitting this, I noticed that the front of it, the leading edge, is supposed to almost have a square end on it, and then roll back. So what I tried to do was make that square end and make it fit just right. But that ended up being kind of a problem, and I'll show you later. So I glued this on first, thinking, okay, see that light part, which is where the fairing is supposed to go on the leading edge there. I decided I'd glue that down first and make it line up along that opening. And I did a really nice job of this. The problem is that when that's glued like that in the square, in that little square footprint, it turns out it doesn't have the right geometry to go around. At least I couldn't make it go around nicely. I think what happened was it slid down, and then the fairing really wasn't touching the leading edge of the fin too well. So when I tried to actually roll those pieces around once things were dry on either side, it just didn't look good. So I ended up pulling it apart and putting it on slightly differently. It looks good in the end, but I couldn't make it follow that line exactly. So while that's drying, there's another piece we could work on, and that's the pieces that, again, you can't see. There's one. There's 3 pieces that I've put onto the pieces of cardboard, and they're all colored, and they are part of sort of a rollover cage. Fits right behind the pilot's head, and actually has a little tiny piece of a little headrest on one of them. So all I'm doing is I put paper on them, glued them, the actual the pieces that are from the kit. They're all glued onto these pieces. These are the laser cut parts. Glued them on, and I just sandwiched them together. Make sure they're even, and you got to make sure you put the right ones against each other, because you want to have the green showing on the outside. And in fact, there's a little excuse me, there's a little piece that's a little lighter. That's where the headrest is going to go. But on the outside of it, there is a contoured piece of sort of the silver color that wraps all the way around and um, hides the layering, and it looks really good. It works really well. So all this is simply adding glue all the way around and wrapping that piece around it to finish it off. I started by doing just a little bit at a time, and then ended up putting glue on the rest of it and just making sure that it all attaches and dries straight and true and everything else. It's the right thickness. It's a well thought out part. Looks good. The only thing I don't know is, are those clear parts supposed to have windows in them, or are they just clear? Are they just literally like a rollover cage? And I don't know enough about the airplane to know for sure. Some things did have, glass there, or plexiglass or whatever. I'm not sure this did, so I left them open. If somebody knows, let me know. But there it is done, and now I'm putting a little dab of glue where the headrest goes. And this is the headrest. It's 2 pieces of paper on either side of a little piece of cardboard. So you got a front and a back, and then the front part, of course, is sort of the brownish looking piece for the cushion. And then you just glue that in place and let it dry a little bit, and that comes out really nice. I'm just getting a little bit of pressure to make sure it's making contact. And then you just glue this onto that place area right behind the cockpit, right behind the pilot's seat. And it looks pretty good. When I put windows and stuff, when I put the canopy over top of it, I think it'll look even better. But putting this on fits pretty well. It's not a perfect fit in terms of the contour, which means that my contour isn't exactly right, but it's dang close. And that just fits right on there like so. And all you have to do is, once you put it on, it's vertical. It's supposed to be vertical. So basically, you hold it and you make sure that it is all even and straight. Make sure it's completely vertical, up and down. So look at it from the side, etc. And you'll have a nice little piece on there. And it's fun to do these things because it's starting to, every little layer makes it look better and better. Makes it look more like the airplane. So there I'm just checking to make sure that she's good and solid. And that looks good. Any places that are a little bit wonky, I mean, I've tried to put some marker on them and things, but I can go back and touch those up with some paint, which is what I'll do later with a fine brush. And it will be just hunky-dory. So there's the cockpit pieces. Those are nice to be done. And now this is dry, the fairing in the back for the fin. So now I decide to start to put this together, and things are going well, but you see that there is a gap up in front, and I can't get it to go up against the fin. I guess I didn't glue it quite in the right place. And so right about here, I'm realizing if I put this down, I'm going to have an unsightly opening, a big step right in the front. I probably should have just glued it to the fuselage, but closer than I have it, and that's just not quite going to work. So I ended up taking it off, go ahead and gluing it down all around the edges, and I'm just going to put it on like I originally had test fit it, which is, I guess, technically incorrect, but so it won't have a flat front edge like that the outline shows down there, but it still looks good. And when I'm all done, I only have a couple places where I'm going to have to do a little tiny bit of touch up. Nothing horrendous, not a big deal at all. It will still look fantastic. And then that'll be done. But I'm just putting glue around all the edges, sort of the top and the bottom, so that it will touch the fin and also touch the top of the dorsal part of the fuselage. And any excess glue is easily cleaned up and smoothed out like putty almost, and works fine. So I go ahead and put this down, and it starts to adhere pretty quick, and I just try to make sure that it is going along that clear part. And notice the back does match up nice. That little diagonal piece back there matches pretty well. And then I'm pulling it down here. Perfect photography. Just making sure it's matched up. And again, any place where there's a little bit of glue, you can just squish it with your fingers or a Q-tip or a handy knife or whatever, and it dries clear anyway, so you're good. And here I'm making sure a little bit here and there, push here and there with pieces, implements to make sure it looks good. And then I finally tuck in that last piece that didn't have glue on it. So now the fairing is done. And I think it looks all right. This bodes well for the wing fillets. I think the wing fillets will probably go in nicely. So pretty exciting. And there's little places here where I am going to have to do a little touch up on a couple places. Right along down that front piece, there's a spot, and then right along part of the fin. But again, it's nothing that's a wrecker of the whole model. Not a big deal. So there's a piece right there that'll have to be painted, and I'll have to do a little bit of touch up in a couple other places. But none the worse for wear. So I'm pretty pleased. Again, that makes everything strong and nice and streamlined. That's done. That turtle deck piece is finished. It looks pretty good. I'm pleased. I'm removing cat fur from it. My cat leaves fur everywhere. Gets all his fur into my wife's knitting too. But anyway, looking good. So I'm liking this. So then I was moving along and everything's going so well, I thought, okay, I will make the rudder. How hard could it be? And here's where I ran into a bit of trouble. So I decided to go ahead and try to make the rudder. The pieces are self-explanatory, sort of, although I did put a piece in wrong. I'll show you. But there's the main fin. You can see those edge pieces are the trim tabs. But I took a piece of wire and set it to where the center is. And then I just kind of carefully almost burnished it with my fingers. And I kind of put my fingers together like that and squeezed it so that I'm getting a round leading edge. It's not a hard edge. Just enough so that I don't get a kink. I don't want a kink. And then I fold this together to make sure it's matching up. So I want to make sure those trim tabs match up. If they do, which they do, spoiler alert, that means I got everything in the center. I measured all that, by the way. And then this piece here has to be rolled into a little teeny cylinder. That's not hard or easy to do. It's just sort of there. It's something you got to do. And once you fold the piece together and start and tweak it a little bit with your fingers, it looks just fine. Here I'm just making sure it's even, which it is. And then I'm doing a little bit more rolling with the that leading edge, just to try to make sure that everything looks good. And so I'm satisfied that it's coming together. Now I got to refine those shapes, like right down there. That has to be more of a rounded shape because there's a little plastic or a paper former that goes in there. So here I'm trying to make that shape a little less sharp so that it'll fit better. These pieces, by the way, were mislabeled on that little piece said it was supposed to go on the bottom, and then there's a big piece, this one, that's supposed to, they said, go on the top, so they were numbered wrong. But it's pretty obvious which is which. So this one goes on the bottom, but you can see that I'm not matching. My curve does not match my piece of paper. Interestingly, this piece of paper too, this teardrop shape, it's not supposed to have any cardboard behind it. I thought it would. But here I am taking an implement handle of a paintbrush and squooshing it onto my finger, trying to make this rounder, which I succeed in doing. That's all it takes. And then I grab the piece and test fit it, and it's got a much better curve, and it will go in really nice. So I'm just going to end up putting a little bit of, that actually fits really good. Put in a little bit of glue on either side, and then slam that sucker shut. So I put some glue on it, get it ready. All the way around the edges on the inside, because I assume that's where that piece is supposed to go. Make sure I got some on the leading edge too. And then I grab my little component and I slide it in. It's supposed to be, I think, flush with the edge of the rudder. So I'm just kind of making sure that it is flush and that I can sort of sandwich it in between. And then I have a little bit of glue on the trim tabs just to sort of hold them shut. So I'm squeezing a little bit. So there, that looks pretty nice. So I got a nice contour, looks good. Um, Actually looks really good. And then I'll do the same thing on the top. Now the problem is this piece, I put it, the next piece that's another fairing or another round piece to give it shape. It's not supposed to go up on the top. It's supposed to go on the top of this piece of the this component. It's supposed to go on another part, and I'll show you that later. Um, my next video, I'll probably show you where it's supposed to be. But anyway, now I'm making sure this is looking good. And what I thought was that this little piece that I have down on the table there actually fits up here to give the top a shape. It turns out that's not the case. This actually just gets the very tippy top of the rudder, that's the balanced portion of the rudder, just gets edge glued onto that part. And then that little shaping piece goes into a component of that top edge, which isn't here yet. I'll show you in a second when I start putting them on. But this, what I'm doing right here, is absolutely incorrect. You don't put this piece in here. And I was wondering why why does it have that white line, or that white little circle in it? But the end has a nice curve with a nice point, so it seemed to make sense that it goes right there. And I dutifully put it in, and it dried. It looked great. But then after I started to play with it, I realized that's not where it's supposed to go. And I looked on the directions, and sure enough, I had it in the wrong place. So the last components are these two pieces here. These are the two pieces that overhang. These are the balanced portions, and they fit on either side just like that. They're flat, so I got to make them curved. And so I curve them in the usual way, taking something round, cylindrical, and giving it a little slight curve. I also take a piece of, or a handle, a paintbrush handle, and I kind of curl over the top edges so that they're not just flat. Neil over Neil's Paper Models, he does it all the time, stressing that you don't want these pieces to be flat. And he's absolutely right. They're supposed to have a shape to them, a contour. So they're supposed to look like they have some volume. So curve it a little bit so that it will fit and match to the component of the rest of the rudder. But then you do kind of take those edges and push them with some kind of tool. He has the cake decorating tools. I'm just using the back of this brush handle, and it just gives it an actual shape. So now it looks like it's got a curve on the top as well. And those should come together pretty well. So everything was going right at this point. Nothing goes wrong, but there I'm test fitting it. But that piece again is just supposed to butt glue right there. You're not supposed to have a little piece of former in there. The overhang that you see there on the pieces I'm trying to put on now, that is where you're supposed to put that little paper former, not in that lower part of the fin. But I fixed that later when I realized my mistake. But this is still valid, what I'm doing here. It's still what you have to do to get these balanced components of the rudder on. I'm not sure why they made them in separate pieces. I guess fidelity, it just looks better to put them on these in little bits as opposed to have it just shaped completely. But anyway, once I get this right, I'm just putting this right on the edge, making sure the trailing edge is matched up. And then I played with this a couple of times to make sure I didn't have a step. I take it off and reposition it like that a few times, and make sure I rub off the excess glue to give a nice contour. And then you basically, once you got that, you think that's pretty good, then you put the other side on, and then you glue them together. And you very carefully touch them and bring them together, because again, you want them to have air between them on the inside. They're supposed to have a shape. They're not flat. So do the same thing with this side, carefully add it on, just like that. And now you can see on the top, that's open, but all you got to do now is add a little bit of glue all along this edge, and you should be good to go, because all you have to do now is very carefully kind of touch them together. So watch how delicate this is. See, I barely am holding those together and wiping off the excess, and actually glued quite well. it's straight, and any pieces that aren't quite right, you can kind of squeeze them with your fingers or a pair of tweezers. But that is contoured, and it looks really good in real life. It doesn't look as good on the camera, I don't think. But it looks really good. I was pretty pleased with that. And then imagine my chagrin when I realized that other little contour piece is supposed to go underneath that overhang. Because at some point here, I turn this over and look and go, I don't know why there's this opening here. And I realized there's an opening there, moron, because that's where that piece is supposed to go. So anyway, there it is, and the shape again is very good. Here's where I ran into trouble though. When I try to mate it up to the fin, notice the markings don't come together, and if you look carefully, the pieces don't match. Um, the vertical piece doesn't come together, and then the bottom part doesn't really make a nice seam with that top part of that tip fuselage down there on the bottom. I think what I did wrong is those pieces that go on that vertical part right there on the fin. So you see how it's not going all the way in where it's supposed to? It needs to go in further. And I think that's because those blue-green pieces are probably supposed to be concave. I think I'm supposed to have those basically match that leading edge of the rudder. So when you put the rudder in, it's rounded and then it fits into basically this channel. So at that point, I'm kind of bummed, but I'm reminding us that we did get these things finished and they look good. Kind of checking them out, they look just fine. But I'm going to have to fix the tails. The tails right now are so far my worst part. Because this, again, you see that hole up in the top. I'm wondering, why is that even there? And that's when I'm starting to realize I got the wrong piece. But even worse than that is this. Because you can see these don't match up and the angles are all wrong. So it has to go down further and it won't match the lower part where it's supposed to come up against things. So I'm just realizing that piece almost seems like it shouldn't be there. If that was off, I think that the thing would actually match up pretty well. I think. I'm not 100% sure. See, if that was not there, I think that the markings would come together, but I'd still need to inlay it in further. So I do think, about this point, I'm realizing I think that piece right there is supposed to have a curve in to match the convex part. So we're going to have to go back and fix that, and I will give you an update. But still, good work done, and we still made progress.